The meeting carried.
You live stream now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It needs a little bit time now. It's on
8 o'clock.
YouTube.
The meeting carried.
You live stream now?
Yeah. Yeah.
주주 제어다다 라탄다
It needs a little bit time now. Now it's double. It's on
8
YouTube.
o'clock.
YouTube.
The meeting
Was ist das?
carried.
You live stream now?
Ja. Ja.
주주 제어다다 라탄다
It needs a little bit time now. Now it's double. It's on YouTube. Was ist das?
You live stream now?
Ja. Ja.
주주 제어다다 라탄다
It needs a little bit time now. Now it's double. It's on YouTube.
You live stream now?
Ja.
Sound from.
Brauche ich wieder Zeit, Mensch. Der doppelt Geschichten mit dem YouTube.
Ich muss jetzt gerade was weiterleiten. Moment, ich muss gerade weiterleiten.
Ja, ist das Siebeke? Mit
Mirko.
Mirko.
Can the translators hear me?
Yes. Ja.
Yes. I just
Also ich
sent
schon.
you. Du schon, aber die anderen glaube ich nicht, oder?
Ach so.
Du bist im
das weiß
Hauptraum.
ich. Okay.
Was brauchst du?
Ich habe denen was geschickt.
Achso.
Kann ich die hören? Ja? Oder? Kann ich so kannst du es einstellen, dass die Übersetzer mich hören?
Die sind da.
Can the translators hear me?
Ja.
I just sent you some the parts of His Holiness speech, which I just received from Sonam. Maybe you could check. I just sent it to you all.
Ich weiß jetzt nicht, warum das doppelt war. Naja, sonst lasse ich den weg. I would now let people in. Is it okay?
Now? Okay.
Ja,
Let me do it.
okay.
Let me,
Alle
Luna?
zulassen.
Da kann ich nicht hören. Ja?
Hm?
So.
Doch, ich kann dich ja auch hören.
Also alle Dateien sind jetzt zum Weiterverschicken.
Ja, die E-Mail kannst du einfach so weiterleiten, ja. An die Übersetzer.
Ja, jetzt wahnsinnig spät für die können es wahrscheinlich gar nicht mehr lesen.
Ja. Wir haben es halt auch erst gerade bekommen und gerade so fertig. Ja, geht auch ohne. Also ich habe, ja, ist auch alles. Ich bin ja auch noch dran, das hier zusammenzustückeln. Also es ist nur Material, es ist auch nichts direkt, was er sagen wird. Das Einzige, was er eventuell direkt so lesen wird, ist das, was ich am Anfang schickte, ne, mit dem, wie die Gottheit aussieht und was sie bedeutet. Der Rest ist halt nur so Material, was ich so jetzt heute noch so reinkam.
那如果说既然我们现在是一个要修心的人，那对于这些放逸的话，我们要修心的话，就不能去做这些放逸的事情。我们要提起自己的正知正念，所以这里头就要想到说，我要做这些事情。然后呢，务必着意。那这个务必着意的意思是务必就是要让。 放在哪里呢？这个着意就是把自己的心专注在地方呢，是专注在善恶的取舍之处。那这个时候是用什么样的意思呢？就是用我们的正念的意思。这个时候就是提起我们的正念啊。然后呢，在身体上的一个表现的话呢，为了呢更好的让我们能够有正念，身体上能够。 当合适的颜色下随于一偶尔长处合适，就是我们在这个时候呢，我们平常看的，就是差不多是偶尔长，差不多就是我们讲说一个是看的，我看度的那个，哦耶，这样的一个长度。
Please, can everybody mute himself so that the microphone is off? And then please stay muted until the end. Thank you.
That's cool.
We would start now.
Eintreten lassen müssen. There's still coming people coming.
Sagt ihr, wenn wir mit den Gebeten anfangen können?
Ja. Daniela?
Ja.
Die Gebete zuerst.
Sollen wir damit anfangen jetzt?
Ja.
Dann könnt ihr währenddessen reinlassen. Okay.
Genau.
Christy, can you show the prayers, please?
Sanjen Chedan Enso Dagin Jin Soy
Jin So Jibe So La Ji
Drola Sanje Sanje Chudan
So
Soje
Ji Cho Nam La San Jo Bang
Yandane Jasu
Ye Jiao Zu
Dagin Jin Soy
Jin So
Jebe
Jibe So La
Dola
Sanje
Sanje Judain Zoji
So Ji Cho Nam
Janju Yampada Indane Jazu Dake Jinso Jebe Dola Sanje Mahayana Govinda
Nyambe Simche Tamche Ye Gyudan Hewa Gyuche Ye Gyudan Hewa Gyuche Nye Mebe Dewa Nane Dewa Gyuche Nye Re Chaba Debe Tanyo La Newa Gyuche Nyambe Simche Tamche Dewa Dan Dewe Gyudan Gyuche Nye Gye Gyudan Dewa
Dunga mebe and
Dewa Dan Dewa
Orange, Nyere
Nyere Jada Nidan Debe Tanyo
Line and Orange, and I
Nyambe Simche Tamche Dewa
Deva Dine Deven Shodan
Gyudan Dama
Orange, Dunga and I
Debe Gyudan
and Doma mebe Melawarij Nyere Chadai Tonya Lai Neborij Omzu de mime Hingje Ranzu Yandorje Sangha Enze Chang Yishe Kandu Jave Seku Yandorje Himbo Sha Soa Yandezo Shinje Hayun Trube Jeme Zara Dongha Jude Dershon Ribe June Arya Deva Dawa
Kabe Shapla
So Nanjare Wanshu
Mata Kita
Dorje Chang Tilo Dorje Naro Naro Barba Loze Shavla So Jude Janso Yamada Sheju Modo Marmoy Junze Kungai Suje Rabe Shalai So Jugen Changwai Rinche Sangpo Ai Rinze Dedon Zonju Sanje Yuden Sha Moju Rinche So Ranja Lojen Sona Chujin Ojenga Damji Some Kinshin Shirai Bade Rinchen Banso Shabbat So Chubai Tanduyan Chumbai Rinjan Dai Dambuya Sanje Naroi Nyebai Bonzo Rinjan Etabai So Jabda Benje Guchoy Londo Dai Juntroy and Zombu Eva Dondru Chuje Chuje June So Sanchen Jeben Elen Yende Jem Enjuro Lundru Yankarma Tale She Nyemkara So Some Yande Janso Yanda Kinchen Karma Antashi Wizard Durden Johnson Shiver Denzen Durden Shavla So Dendar Pinchen Lame Toche La Mugu Solde Lame La La Baje Boye Jame Jeye Rimnye Lamje Choye Ramdu Kajo Denden Dorje Chamje Ombo Enzende Enyela Enyurdu Cheva Kundu Yanda Mandrame Namala Elonshu Sadai Anje Dorje Jonge Sajin Changsa Watan Chujin Shawatan Jesu Yuru Kushin Sowa Yewa Lage Chisa Pante Shanju Om Guru Indewa Dai Reta Mandala Purti Senje Naim Jaya Samba Yandam Moye Jenda Jeda Jayan Joy De Mo Moyan De Yamba Jayan Jayan Bordo Bordo Zo
On behalf of the Milarepa Retreat Center, and with much joy, I'm delighted to welcome His Holiness the Trikong Kyabgon Tinle Lundup. We feel deep gratitude to have the unique opportunity to celebrate the first auspicious commemoration of the Mahaparinirvana of Ngoktön Choku Dorje with Your Holiness's presence, inspiration, and blessing. I also would like to welcome very heartily our second speaker, His Eminence Chökyi Kutchen Rinpoche. Rinpoche has been a strong inspiration and motivation in fulfilling His Holiness' wish to celebrate this auspicious day today. I would like to welcome very warmly the Venerable Rinpoches, Khenpos, and all ordained around the world. Our third speaker is Dr. Cécile Duché. Cécile is an expert on the Mar Ngok lineage. She will share today some most interesting new research work with us. I welcome Cécile very heartily. It is wonderful to introduce 5 translators who will translate into the following languages: Vietnamese by Su Su, Chinese by Miss Lin from the Glorious Jewel Buddhist Center in Taiwan, German by Christoph Klonk, English by Sonam Spitz, Russian by Sasha Betcher, and Spanish by Alex Munoz. My warm welcome goes to all of you. Furthermore, I send my hearty welcome to all the Sanghas and participants around the world, and to our supporters, Christy, Mildred, and Hua Turkey. This event is going to be moderated by Daniela König, who represents and works since 2016 very enthusiastically for the Mar Ngok group. I welcome Daniela very warmly, and now I would like to pass over to Daniela. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina, for your introductory words. Not only are we happy about this event, but also about our first speaker, His Holiness Trikong Kyabgon Tinle Lundup. His Holiness expressed for many years his wish to revive the Hevajra and Naratmya practices and the connected tantras. And with that, putting the great translator, Lord Marpa Lotsawa, at his proper position of honor for the Kagyu lineages. His Holiness has been playing an important role in publishing rediscovered texts and the spread of the teachings of the Mar Ngok lineage. Your Holiness, it's an honor to give you the word on this special occasion, the Mahaparinirvana of Ngoktön Choku Dorje, one of Marpa's heart sons, who was key for spreading Lord Marpa Lotsawa's tantric teachings and passing it on to further generations. Please, Your Holiness.
Dorje chawa dele naru da mame tapu potu jite gadisum de zawa lame sha zayu lama yitam chusung la sawan de su da yu chinge in the Thoma the and to choose a good which is the NCC France as the speaker there and then Thoma Daniela the Gulon Chevrola and Tari they are more Choku Dorje the name also that longo 국제심주 소지 고백이 and today in Modelia and the Ngoktön Choku Dorje Pensoda 제제 이 네 구직진에 밀라레베 주소 and 상월로 디나 흉년다 디나리아 팬년 상월로 통하게 다시 되셔야지
So I would firstly like to also heartily welcome His Eminence Choje Kuchen Rinpoche and Cécile Duché from France, who's also one of the speakers, and for the nice introduction and work of being the anchor man, anchor woman, Daniela König, for this event today of the commemoration of the 939th anniversary of Ngoktön Choku Dorje's Parinirvana. And likewise, I would like to thank the Milarepa Center for the organization and say my hearty welcome and Tashidelek to everyone around the world that listens and participates in this.
Tene tari deya Ngoktön Choku Dorje gi lo kubjesum jusoji koreki ta chaso yindu Ngoktön Choku Dorje di tene ta marbegi mapaloza gi tene di should I stop translate that? Should I continue?
It's fine. Continue.
Okay. 아니 당고 죽도 지기 다리 되네 롱어 국제심주소지 고백이 주제 당고 죽도 지디 상매 캐서 되는 말고 로제기 되는 걸로 같이 시스 달로마 망구지 요때 디 나로냐 말고 로제기 되네 다 최고디 되네 강바다고 직전 강바디 야 야냐기 까와로 시요와 근데 일라레바타 수도왕에다 되네 텔라소가 인디비다 다리 디까와 시나기 찍기 엔조 뭐 죽도지데 그런 거 죽도지디 되네 뭐 동답지 다다 마지양도가 뭐 동답 마지연배가라야 엔네 동답 니슈자둑바 디키기도
So today is the commemoration of the 939th anniversary of the great disciple of Marpa Lotsawa, who is Ngoktön Choku Dorje. So he was one of the main disciples of the great master Marpa Lotsawa. Marpa Lotsawa had many disciples, but one says compared to a house, a house is built on four main pillars, like the whole teaching of Marpa is built on four main disciples, likewise, and one of these, so they were of course Milarepa and the other very famous ones, but one of these is also him, Ngoktön Choku Dorje. And as one can hear from his name, he was born in a clan that the name is Ngok of that clan, and he was the 26th descendant of that clan.
Ni ngo Choku Dorje thungsa di tene anda ani phel hoga shungi ju dogi saras du phel gi hoga sebe kala phel hasa gi hoga ju tanda tene namru tha yosadi ta hoga sigwa di ka namru tha yosadi o di gi shung tene ya tene shungi ju sta di hoga shungi ani ringo ju ya ka ya and dogbe sa ji na lo ya ani 총도 로베 사진의 통니 아니 코마기 시 길중 봤으니 얘기 뒤에잖아요 뒤에는 잡에参与있어요 아니 기시 길중대기 꾸마치 제가 마블로즈 샤블 독쇼스 콩기 줍던 답기 마블로즈 샤블 독도.
And so this master Ngoktön Choku Dorje, he was born in the year 1036 in the area of Tibet. It's called Riwojung or Shungi Riwo, and it is in the south of the today's city of Lhasa, like an area that is like around where the airport is today. There, and that is the area where he comes from, and it was a nomad area, and so that is where he was born, and he then started his studies with a master called Geshe Gyerchung, and from him he learned he received the teachings on the Nama Sangiti, chanting the names of Manjushri, and then was recommended by his teacher to meet his destined Lama guru, that was Marpa disciple, yes, Marpa Lotsawa. So he was told he should to go and meet Marpa.
Ngoktön Choku Dorje and Marpa jaga Rebecca di kabla khona golu chopje and Marpa Rosa golu shiji tabeka them do and diga la thongmar de khongi kharna basna and tanda ke doji ki yapka yumga yorwa ta yapka de ke doji thagula sobarwa and yumga de dangme mal hamo jonga la sobai du thongma dangme mal hamo jonga ki ne wan tha menga dikiti nani and kondi nyamne cheche du and
and so when he went and met with his main teacher Marpa, then for the first time, when they actually encountered, Ngoktön Choku Dorje was at around the age of 18, and Marpa Lotsawa himself at around the age of 40. And then he started imparting the transmissions of the Hevajra cycles, the teachings to Ngoktön Choku Dorje, and began with the 15 goddesses Nairatmya Mandala. So the female aspect of the Hevajra practice. We know the male aspect is the Hevajra deity, and it's usually in the nine deity mandala, but he practiced the 15 goddess Nairatmya mandala and attained realization of that.
Tijelia tene marbe tene di kiedoji haguche and kurrik duche tenshil hamache Mahamaya la soba, Alhanga la soba, one, Menga Chazana, Tene Shungju, Kunding, Sasan the Comba, Chatab, Dea, Jizu Marbaya, Tengma, and the Shuche, Yamlendos Nando.
And then later on received the other tantric cycles of, first he received the male practice of Hevajra, the 9 deity mandala of the male deity, and then the other tantric cycles of Mahamaya and Chatushpita and so forth, complete with all the tantras and transmissions and practice instructions, and also founded a temple of himself, then his own place. The name, we will hear it later in Cecile's presentation, really.
And then we Choku Dorje di, thank you, Kon Shubana, Shungi, Dan drop by such a you do Kon drop by Kim Sasha. Takon Taji Kim the Pan, drop by Kim the Bang. And they do the Kon Toma the Bondas, Kai, you get Sangas, Lama the Pia. That how Lama Hase and Gujala, someone never says that Lutache. Or the day Tanga Sunani, and the Tanga Tango di Gablaya, the Koran do ya, in the Dukias Jews, Shoyadi, and the member, that proper desk the Daguri or what Dagusu Yagi, Zibes in your cool, or the Dia and the Punano. Sure. Then the Panda Niba di Gabla and the Koran get better you in the better Sumjul has scored. Then that Tama they call that's all look you said, look Yagorji you said it. Look Sermos to look more than the Yagorji you said it. 이게 참마 퓨 어딘데 체제는 다 참마 지에면 방다 체네 아니 게더기 잔지 마하마야 대실라서 봐 규드명아 탐제나지 아니 가르송열스나 다 케랑기 마르베 룽덴나지 케랑기 규바 미럽 듀잉기 징갈라 아니 도지 티분 짐바 잠기 친럽 징에 치기 인세 칭길라네 앤디 탄다 규림나라 뭐 규듀인도와 뭐 규듀기 세 이네 뭐 주구도지네 마 미럽 듀잉기 징갈 어디 친럽 징기 규바티 근데 또 충분해서
And in order to obtain all these transmissions, he performed this so-called three complete abandonings of all possessions. Yeah, he offered up to his guru Mapa Lotsawa everything that he had for 3 times. As we heard, he was born in a nomad area. He came from a nomad background, and so at the first time when he, for the first time, offered up everything that he possessed, it was all his nomad possessions, so all the cattle, yeah, like yaks and so on, and they're living their home. So they live in tents made from yak hair. So these tents he all offered up to the guru. And then the second time when he gave up everything that he had, he offered up all the texts that he had, it's like more than 30 volumes of text that he possessed. And the third was then only sheep were left, and he gave all his sheep away to the guru, and then received all the tantric cycles instructions, and with all the practice instructions and nothing missing. And at that time he received the blessing from his guru Marpa, who prophesied, so your Ngok lineage will continue for 7 generations, and in a way that all of them, there will emerge Vajra and bell holding masters. Yeah, so all of them will be Vajra and bell holders. This is the blessing I give you, and this is also what manifested afterwards. We know that the Ngok lineage of Marpa's disciples continued for these 7 generations.
Ngoktön Choku Dorje da 태수 쉬야데 조 가르사 코디 조디 개바도지기 냠네치 얘기 다 규바 조 리지간 증보다 버리 디인도 다 개더데 조 인도 인 개더게 또라 템부 슈비 엔 지다 개더기 냠네게 토라 시바 슈트야 요마데 카이스나 아니 디 네졸라미 규지 윤두 아니 녀라 완타 아니 라서 마토바 아니 타게 토시야 요마데 딘디인두 이 상황 탐증인자다 이내야 아니 땅어 주고도 탄다 개도를 가라주 꾸디 참말로 제기여로 탄게 날이요데 꾸디 근데 꾸디 넘버디 근데 이미 디도다 이 개도기 유바 근데 중요하다 최고 근데 중요하다 what this we.
And so afterwards, then what the Ngoktön Choku Dorje is mainly known for is this upholding of the Vajra lineage that he received from his master Marpa Lotsawa. And this is also what I want to introduce now briefly. I cannot say much about the Vajra Tantra now. This is something you can only do in a Lama and disciple context, and just, when you have received empowerment and so on. I cannot give extensive teachings here via the internet now, but we all know the appearance of Vajra, how he looks like. We all have seen tankas and statues and so on, and like what that means, this appearance aspect of Vajra, right? The meaning of the body of Vajra. I want to quickly say a little bit about that.
Ngoktön Dorje di ne ngazu tege kangyur gi nala kangyur khagna jangda di kangyur gi nala gyugi 망부지 요르와 다 규 망부지나라 토마데야 고고데야 기도지 구도 디 기도지 디 데게 간규나 차샤브네 기도기 자규기 요르바다 자규기 데바디 지고라 아니 숨주 서브제지 지고 아니 야디 테네 투고르기 고라 예주 켜구지 юм기 투고고라야 아니 접제점 아니 자규기 양 제바 해규 쿠르기 토라 아니 제바다미 주점지 디 멤버한테 티고기 티글라 소브기 자루틸리 고기 다든데기 고라 니슈 짱아지 켜던베 유기 제바 유기 고라 게도지 고라 제바 야데 예주 탐바 아니 타다 비 간주나라 슈기 버테레스
Yeah, so as for the for Hevajra in the text, in the many Tibetan texts that we have these big collections of texts, the Kangyur and the Tengyur, and so we see how important the Hevajra Tantra is because this is the first Tantra that is actually treated in the Tantra collections. And we have many commentaries on it. So we have a lot of literature, Hevajra literature. And so we have in the Derge Kangyur or Tengyur collection, like on the actual root Tantra, we have 38 commentaries and 89 texts that deal with the male aspect. We have 18 that deal with the female aspect, and 10 that treat the explanatory tantras, and where the tantra, the explanatory tantra, that's the Panjara, and then 25 other texts that deal with the subtle channel and wind topics in connection with Hevajra. So that amounts to 180 texts on the tantra.
다 털어야 깨도 지기수 규바디 아니 용수 타봐 아니 사게 벤데 사게 바타 아니 벤데 까규바니 규바도 조리 디 나로라다 까규베 고디 kindeji 이미 아니 사게 개와 아니 sabje 로사 야주 깨도지 기림 남셰 디셰웨스스니 디나레 아니 베 시에세부지 송이 까규디 고알 kindeji 송도 엘지단기 토마 타고 지송도 야간 나로라 근데요를 거기 심축 체배나라 인질 박배 유주 주번이별로 배만 변자기 셰수유 투제 믿음다외 셰수요레스 근데 주두그 탐제 캠은 이버더블로 신다배기 셰수요레스 에너로는 탐직도지 물로 낙보배 신다바데기 셰수 근데 가진연다 성보고야나 밴데 나로배기 셰수 아니 나다 미드베기 셰수다 나로바다 미드베데 마르베기 라마 쪼데와 이니디 엔데네 아니 람 용수 쪼베 셰베 다 쪼데 다 주부데데스 야가나 람 차상아 주여버디 요다 멍고 요르와 야다 위기데 이네 람 차상아 데좀 세이스 현 도지 닝부기 제와 라소베야 제바 뉴요데 찬주 닝부 라소베 제베 죽답 죽담 유야 and langa lam chasanga and somebody my next
and so in Tibet the two main lineages that are famous for their Hevajra practice, upholding the Hevajra practice, are the Sakya and the Kagyu lineage. And one scholar, his name is Sachin Losel Jatso, a Tibetan scholar. He composed a work that explains the Hevajra Tantra, and he did some he did research and put it very clearly what like the situation of the how the Hevajra is upheld these days. He begins with the Indian masters, so the teaching traditions of accomplished masters in so for the translators, we are in this file on the Tantra, right? And then on the second page, so he says, first the teaching traditions of accomplished masters in India are generally the teaching tradition of Master Padmabhadra, of Mahasiddha Durjaya Chandra, of the one who is like the second omniscient one in this time of strife, Master Ratnakara Shanti, of Master Kanhapa, and a tradition that goes back to Naropa and Master Maitripa. So these are 6 teaching traditions, and these have the complete path. Then there are other traditions, still yet others, but they don't have the path completely. So there are other 7 commentaries and sadhanas, but they are not. They don't have the complete path. The other traditions don't. Other than these aforementioned 6 traditions, don't have do not contain a complete path. That's it.
Tene pöla na tanda sakje losan 교수님 그 사계배 개발 신부지를 봐니. 에는 공기다 pöla 제전난 주 pö고 고래 신축난 가르송었으나 pögel라만 남 강기 지순당 벌랑 제베이나 에는 나다 말반네 ngoshung바서는 ngochu고 도진의 마기베 들었은 거라. ngoshung바 규베 민람 요소와 민주디 완체 트람디 티라 소바 용수 조바 찾아와 트람 기디 미야라 투바 조금 스텝을 맹아 대다기 잡데 저규기 셰바 아 아니 남중세 차와유 제 아니 지주 나루다베 지순당바 이라 셰 아니 디게 다람 캠프도 추주도 가가로 사유스 셰 요다 먹고 요아데 베나 표나라 라바스니에다 제바스니에다 tum존로를 잡아다 남딩 만나면 야간기 시에서 때문에 레데 람 용수 줘봐 메토스 세보타제나.
So then this master who composed this text from which we are quoting, Tsachen Losel Gyatso, he's a Sakya scholar, and he continues in his text with the Tibetan tradition, with the Tibetan side of things, and he says the one that is complete there is the one of Marpa that was passed on to Ngok, who was from this Jung area, as we heard. Yeah, it's the lineage from Lord Marpa that was passed on to Ngok. Is the complete one. Its path of liberation is in the generation process in 6 limbs, its perfection process, the key instructions on merging and transference, and they have the backbone of explanations on root and explanatory tantra. So this is the complete path that goes back to Naropa. It goes back to the Indian master Naropa, and there are still other ones again, other lineages like the Repa and Chalpa and Tumtön and so forth, but all these are again lacking a complete path.
따라서 기도지 해봐자 쓰기어와 근데 이게 신경을 안 주. 특된데 세션나 게 신경을 베베다와 해봐자 신경 나가라데 해 미치게다네 해 스케 민마신 해 스케 되어나시 베베다게 도지디 동반이기데 근데 나 동반이 그 신경을지 세기어네 예 동반이 신경을지 다 민디 동반이 따로 예도지 신경 파티 민라 어디 가르쳐는도 그렇습니다. 속내 남게 파르게 쳐 상아도지 티베 닝부디 아니 뭐디 동반 동니 이마지 이 트렌드 동부요. 다 초탐식 닝부디 아니 디 동부요. 다 책디 코네. 이 토네 파다 화예 비움지기 깨도 지금 아주 칼레면 톰베가라 데데베가리아 아니 데비나 디토네 엽다부디나 탑르와 юм다부디 시럽리 디인두 탑시럽 숭도 주바 야나 이야기 탑디 소남기 소 용기디 시랍디 이시기 소 근데 손이 손도 줘봐 나 흉기 토네 람 냠스랑 얘기지 토네 셰비나 아니 다 가라주 고미연배가 세외차 디 테네 얍체 동배차디 윰체 세동 이미 야면은 리동 이미 야면은 얍기 윰을 키버 윰기 얍을 키버디 아니 대화다 동바 첨바 대도 이름을 첨바 나 딘데지 넘버 5까지 기도지 넘버 D 통바 상비 딘데지야 아니 고공이야.
And if I may say a word on the actual name of the deity, it is Choku Dorje in Tibetan, and we use the Indian word He Vajra, and so the two parts are He and Vajra, or Choku and Dorje. So the first part is always this vocative. It is like hey, pretty much like hey or oh, addressing someone, calling someone. And Vajra is a word that basically means emptiness. So we're calling emptiness, oh emptiness, hey emptiness. And that symbolizes that it is the very essence of all the teachings of the Buddha, because it all comes down to the empty nature of all phenomena. That is what it symbolizes. And likewise, the deity in union of, we have the male and the female deity in union. We should understand that the male aspect symbolizes the method, the female, the wisdom aspect, and they are in union. So it's the union of method and wisdom, or in terms of the accumulations, it is the union of the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. And the in terms of the practice path, the male aspect is the clarity, and the female is the emptiness. We can likewise speak of awareness and emptiness in union. So this embracing of the male and female aspect are the union of bliss and emptiness. So this is how we should understand the deity.
당아서 두스 꾸디 제연배가라 아니 제게 차주주 다디 개베들 봐 저는 차주버 차지 봐 근데 요다 단데 차 개바디 제게 차주주 토라 템부진데 셰슈비나 아니 다디 셰드 수신다만데요 다조 셰드 구수 동원보로 와나봐 나 원보디 남게 도다 보고서 얘네 최 탐지가 당신 동반이기 충구요래 아니 예셰 가보디 시와 충구요래 연셰 말보디 왕 충구요래 아니 잡셰 낙보디 니디 타고 충구로 디띵기야 셰 추시투즈야 되네 클레시다 아니 초투무지 무드 쳐야지 나딘데기 셰 예디 충구요래.
And as for the appearance of the deity now, we all might have seen the famous form with that is 8-faced and 16 arms, 16-armed. This form of Vajra, and so the explanation of the meaning, symbolism of the deity is that the central of its the central face of its 8 faces is blue, like the sky. The blue color symbolizes the empty nature of phenomena. The right face is white, representing the pacifying activity. The left is red for the controlling activity. The 2 faces at the rear, at the back side of the head, are black, symbolizing the wrathful activity. The upper face is of smoke color and represents the supreme and common cities.
다디네 차 셰기 차 주주요로 차 주주나는 차 예바 나로라 아니 튼주 속자 예요 디게디 또 아니 나산 드라마데 예 시기요데스 디 페나 아니 랑보치 카르보 di ngara zu loi na za lone tene tangwo bu di uki na za peji da tanga zo COVID-19 da lowa da uki na za yo zo kana se tu ya pingi yo da na singi pungbu kamba di mi samba nyowe ge na za ene lango marbu di ene kong games da nalo kang nalo gu lu gi cha de ya na za la so ba dinde sewe gi chi de yin so
then the 16 arms of the deity, the 8 right arms, or the arms on the right side, they are symbolizing the elimination of the 8 kinds of diseases through these animals that are held in the hands, in these 8 hands. So holding a white elephant in the first hand is symbolizing the elimination of any lung disease related to the lung. The blue horse is for the elimination of breath diseases, probably like our COVID these days. So for these kind of breath and other lung related diseases. Then there is a brown donkey is held in the hand of in the third hand for mental illnesses, and a red ox for the sometimes translated as tuberculosis also, but His Holiness said it's probably something with a blood disease. Yeah. So.
dine ngaba ta nema ngamo thakar di zei na za so da mi marbu di binze da se ta pakbe gi na za dine shawar di gi chimbe gi na za chila khaba shimi da da di cherba gi na za che wa da dige di cha ye gi ge bu di na la ge ne tu so ja di ge ne ge
And furthermore, in the right hand are held a ash-colored camel for the elimination of leprosy, a red human for the elimination of infectious skin diseases, a blue shabara animal for elimination of liver disease, and a cat with for standing for the elimination of any spleen disease.
다드네 드네 차 유연백이特别 얘기 나로다 아니 말아서 왕죽제스 소요의 당보제 사이 사무기 꾸이 왕죽다 취 한모 가르기 송기 왕죽다 룽기 한모 두개기 투기 왕죽다 아니 매일 한모 말을 연대기 왕죽 선배yes.
The implements held in the left hands, the 8 left hands, the skull cups of the 8 left hands, they represent or symbolize the 8 masteries. The first is the earth goddess is held in the first hand, and it symbolizes the mastery of the awakened body. Then the white water goddess symbolizes the mastery of the awakened speech. The smoke-colored wind goddess is for the mastery of the awakened mind. So that
단 나웰 하모디 두바든 나웰 하모 가르보디 에네 갈무 에네 틀레게 왕주타 니멜 하모 마르 준주게 왕주타 에네 신진 나무고 꾼드르와 왕주 노다스부 엔진주게 왕주게 왕주게 두버치오인스.
The red fire goddess for the mastery of awakened qualities, the white moon goddess for the mastery of awakened activity, the red sun goddess for the mastery of miracles, the black yama that is held in the hand is symbolizing the mastery of being able to go everywhere, and the yellow lord of wealth is for the mastery of desires. In this way, this symbolizes the accomplishment of these 8.
다 죽디 테네 샵기 월라 야 로덴 시부디디 고슈긴 다 디게 디 류기시 라즈 셔레 야 두발라 파제시니 류시 요르와 와 디게 디 테네 시월 시베기 된다 pena shab duma ni gi yön kum ye kum be gi sungam gi da bu changba warrior di nyomong be du and ta and shab ye be gi chagbu wang ju chemo di and pungbu du and shab yangman yablo ni gi khardab gi chu gi hai wang bu ye jin di hai pu du da and shen ju wang ji gi da bu nyewa and chida gi du je yes.
And then the deity is standing on a seat or a mat, like that consists of corpses, and these corpses, they symbolize the four maras. The maras are what that are the obstacles to our practice, to our development, and so that he is standing with one leg on the god, the corpse of the god Brahma is the subduing of the Mara of the afflictive emotions. Standing on the corpse of the Shiva is the subduing of the Mara of the aggregates, and the other two deities that they're representing the other Maras of the deity son, deity child, and of death. So these are it's the symbolism of the corpses.
다디 다디 드네 기도지 고기 휘야든지 차샤 드네 투수 겸배야 근데 제 아니다 다니야만에 제 기도지 자유디 티야라 달로니스 코네 멜라레베 추서 티야 두 세베 이내야 아니 다 판다 또이네 COVID-19기 and neshiti kembe panjaje to se inayanta and lojema you don't get me sirchigi and ngana dawa duba china and dawa kuba indiginalia and ngame chashin nashi ki to chigi tsayuti tia dingwala and wangur da ne the tia chashi to see and the couple of pages da 다동 로직 열어 다 로직 유지 페이지 응원고 카드도 페이지 겹사기지 네가를 페이지 셉지 열어 근데도 스테야 다 차지도 시 and in the 디가블라 되네 양 아주 수야디 and 당매매 주사 수야디 당매매 줍젠데 냠보 수야디 당매매 줍젠데 엄제디 땡이라 쳐버와 제아도스의 차지도 세제 그래야 주사 내제 토야는 게 뭔지 인 상말로 수지시.
Yeah, so this much is what I wanted to say. We don't have much more time, so may that suffice. And like 2 years ago, I gave already a little bit teachings on the Hevajra Tantra in the Vilayrepa Retreat Center, and wanted to continue actually, but due to the pandemic, this did not manifest yet. But now we're planning to hold the drupche of the male and female aspect in the they taking turns, right? First we do the drupche of the male aspect, then of the female, and I plan to continue that and to give empowerment and so on. So until we can continue, is still one year to go, and hopefully the situation will be better then. And the next Naratmya Drupchen or Drupche we'll have the chant master will be Daniela, and so we're looking forward to that. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you very much indeed. During His Holiness' speech, we received a lot of messages that your friends and family couldn't enter the room here. Please bear with us. Even if we bought a 1,000 participant room, it blocked at 500. So I hope everybody found the YouTube stream and the links to the other streams. Our next speaker is His Eminence Chitsukuchen Rinpoche, who will introduce us to the life of Lord Marpa Lotsawa and how the Hevatra lineage nearly came to extinction. His Eminence received the first Hevatra empowerment from His Holiness in this century. With that empowerment, strong devotion to Lord Marpa Lotsawa arose in him and the wish to practice the Siddham. His Holiness sent him into retreat, and through this special karmic connections, His Eminence became one of the first Hevatra students in this century. Your Eminence, Chitsukuchen Rinpoche, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
I bow down to the lotus feet of my Guru, His Holiness Jawan Rigungpa, my fellow speaker, Dr. Cecile Ducher, and to all the audiences participating in this auspicious commemoration of Mar Ngok tradition. I would like to offer my warm greetings and Tashidilek. In order to add auspiciousness to this special occasion, today I would like to share my experiences on the significance of life and works of Marpa Chugiludu and Hevajra lineage of Mar Ngok tradition on the basis of what I had learned from my Guru. From the biographies of Milarepa, we have come to know about Marpa as a great master. However, there were also many incidents in his life that prove Marpa was a great student. Marpa was born in a wealthy family and could have avoided all the hardships by studying in Tibet. But it did not satisfy his ambition to learn authentic Dharma. Instead, he chose to sell all his inheritance wealth and travel all the way to India in pursuit of Dharma from its very source. As Marpa reached Nepal, and when he heard the name of Mahapandita Naropa, a deep devotion arose in him and decided not to return home unless he receives all the teachings from Naropa himself. I am also amazed by the choice of gurus that Marpa chose, because Naropa was both Mahapandita and Mahasiddha. Naropa was entitled as Mahapandita for becoming the topmost scholar of the great Nalanda University, and became Mahasiddha by getting enlightened from the teachings received from the Mahasiddha Tilopa. When Marpa met Naropa, Naropa too accepted him as his disciple, because Naropa had earlier been prophesied by his guru Tilopa about the arrival of Marpa. At first, Naropa sent him to other masters such as Maitripa and Kukuripa to receive various Tantra teachings, for which he had to overcome various obstacles of dangerous forests full of wild animals and poisonous lake filled with nagas, demons. He overcame all the obstacles and received many secret Tantra teachings from them. When Marpa returned, Naropa gave him all the teaching once again that he had received from other masters. It was actually a trial for Marpa to purify and test him as a worthy student, which he passed with his unconditional devotion. Marpa not only came once, but thrice to India in pursuit of precious Buddha Dharma. Purpose of his first journey was to find his guru and receive all the important Tantra teachings, whereas his second journey was to perfect all the Tantra practices into the realization of Mahamudra. His third journey was to unfold the secret Dakini code as per Naropa's prophecy. Marpa received the final teachings from Naropa and attained enlightenment. Thus, Naropa appointed Marpa as his regent and prophesied that he will flourish his teachings in the Himalayan kingdom of Tibet. There has been many Tibetan masters who traveled to India. However, there were no Tibetan master like him who had traveled to India 3 times and had stayed for such a long time, receiving teachings from not only 1, but 13 Mahasiddhas, and then being appointed as a regent of his main guru, Naropa. I personally feel that he is that historical person who has not been appreciated enough by the historians and all the Vajrayana practitioners and followers. The most important and crucial thing I find about his journey to India was the timing. At that time, Buddhism in India may have been well established, yet with the beginning of Arab invasions from outside, despised by Brahmanical community from within, Buddhism in India was beginning to feel the heat of the hostile atmosphere and was slowly sliding towards its extinction. Hence, from that point, Marpa's timely quest for authentic masters and relocating their precious teachings by translating them into Tibetan was undeniably one of the greatest contributions for the sustenance of Buddhist tantras and liberation of countless worthy beings, for which we are ever grateful to him. When Marpa returned to Tibet, he became very famous. Students from far and wide came to seek teachings from him, including 4 of his dedicated heart sons or disciples. They are the Ngoktön Choku Dorje, Ngoktön Chenpo, Churtön Wangye, and Milarepa. According to their own karmic connections, Marpa gave different set of teachings to each of his heart sons and appointed them as his regents. He prophesied them that in future, the teaching lineage will flourish like a river stream, generating limitless great practitioners and many enlightened masters. Despite having attained such knowledge, fame, and disciples, Marpa spent remaining of his life as a common farmer. Such a humbleness indicates the sign of true yogi, just like all the previous Mahasiddhas. Though common people may see him as a normal farmer, only the worthy disciples saw him as a Vajra himself. There are many stories of him performing extraordinary miracles as a proof of him having attained the true enlightenment. Amongst all the sacred teachings that Marpa had received, Vajra had a very special place for him. It is said that Mahasiddha Naropa gave He Vajra as his first empowerment and has been Marpa's personal deity Yidam since then. Marpa too gave He Vajra to his foremost disciple Ngoktön Choku Dorje as his first empowerment and was later appointed as his regent of He Vajra teaching. Marpa also gave the famous 6 sets of bone ornaments of Naropa to Ngok as an auspicious blessing. The rise and flourish of He Vajra teaching can be understood from the life of Ngoktön Choku Dorje. As a sign of his successful accomplishment of He Vajra, he attained highest form of rainbow body called Jalu Khachuk Shekpa that dissolve into the space of Dharmakaya without leaving any physical remains. Again, 7 of his following descendants too contributed in further flourish of He Vajra teaching by composing many important commentaries of He Vajra and thereafter practicing it and attaining realization. These 7 descendants are thus famously known as Rinchen Dunden, or the 7 jewels of Ngok lineage. The successful practices, accomplishments, and realization of such masters indicated the success of He Vajra tradition, benefiting many for several centuries. However, He Vajra teaching is also regarded as one of the most profound and secret, due to which very less have been able to prove their worth as disciple. Even fewer were able to actually accomplish it. Thus, in due course of time, He Vajra teachings of Mar Ngok tradition seems to have declined to its lowest. Therefore, in order to revive such a precious teachings, His Holiness Jawan Drigungpa has been working for past 2 decades, beginning from searching, collecting of all the works of Marpa Chukilodu. Thereafter, like all other genuine masters who believe in practice what you preach, His Holiness went to retreat almost a year at the holy mountains of Lapchi. Finally, in 2006, His Holiness gave empowerment instruction of He Vajra teaching to the tulkus, monks, and yogis and yoginis of Drigungkaju lineage at main seat of Drigungkaju Changchubling for a month. At the end of the teaching, in my heart, I somehow felt tremendous interest and devotion to further practice such a remarkable teaching. And as I went to offer mandala to His Holiness as a gratitude for such a wonderful teaching, His Holiness told me in the assembly, I know you want to go for He Vajra retreat, so be ready. It seemed like he had read my mind, and I felt so fortunate and more devotion towards him and going for retreat. It was around Lunar New Year. His Holiness took us to the mountains of Almora and gave us numerous instructions related to He Vajra sadhana. It was his kindness and blessing that during that particular retreat, I had the most meaningful and enriching retreat experiences and results. And somehow I'm so fortunate in being his foremost disciple of He Vajra transmission. In the same year, back in the monastery, I heard that His Holiness had almost completed complying and editing of all the teachings of Marpa and was about to print them in a book form with 3 volumes titled Marpa Kambum. I was very excited and happy that His Holiness' decade-old hard work for the revival of Mar Ngok teaching was finally at its completion. I requested His Holiness to give me the opportunity to sponsor the printing cost of the first publication of Marpa Kambum, as I felt I had special connection with it. Marpa Kambum was first of its kind to be ever published in the history of more than 1,000 years of Kajuba lineage. This effort of His Holiness is one of the greatest contributions to the entire Kajuba lineage and will play a key role in the revival of Mar Ngok tradition. His Holiness made tireless effort in bringing out the text of Mar Ngok tradition, instructions, teachings, and all the necessary requirements for us. It is now our responsibility as his students to put our best effort in practicing them with utmost devotion and sincerity. Since Kaju tradition is well known for dedicating one's life to Guru and practice of Dharma. By the blessings of my Guru and being a practitioner of He Vajra teaching, I have always great devotion towards Marpa and his teachings. Hence, following the footsteps of my Guru, Jawan Digungpa, I have always tried to dedicate my life in preserving and promoting the teachings of Kajuba lineage, and especially the Marpa's very own teachings. It is so auspicious that we are able to celebrate commemoration of Mar Ngok lineage with His Holiness Jawan Digungpa. I feel that this event is not just a celebration, but a reminder to all the students of His Holiness that it is his vision which we all need to put our best effort. I rejoice and would like to congratulate the team of Mar Ngok organization for initiating various projects related to the revival of Mar Ngok lineage. And I thank Milarepa Retreat Center, Germany, for organizing such an auspicious commemoration. Inviting me and making me part of this important historic event, I thank you all. May the Mar Ngok lineage flourish like the sun, moon, and the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Our next speaker is Dr. Cécile Duché, who has been conducting scholastic research into the early history of the Kagyu lineage since the year 2000. She has collaborated with the Mar Ngok Group since its official beginnings in 2017. Dr. Duché's PhD research was on the history of the Mar Ngok lineage, and we are very happy that this research work will be available as a book within the next years. She already published one on Marpa's biographies. Today, Dr. Duché will give a presentation on who the Ngok masters were, with focusing especially on Marpa's disciple Ngoktön Choku Dorje and his son Ngoktön Dorje. She will also give a short glimpse on the Mar Ngok lineage transmissions.
Hello, thank you, Daniela, for the introduction. Hello, Your Holiness. Hello, Chizuku-chan Rinpoche. It's a great honor for me to speak after you and to speak at this event for commemorating the Mar Ngok lineage. I'm very happy to be here with you and to be able to share a little bit of my study. And yeah, of course, thank you to the Milarepa Centrum. who's been there at the since the beginning with this sharing of the Hevajra and the Mar Ngok lineage in Europe. I'm very grateful for the activity. And just a short note maybe for our Vajra brother, Carl, who may be here or maybe not here today, but in my heart, he's here with us, and he's like a very strong force for us all to be together here. And I would like to thank him very much for bringing everything that he brings to this group and to this practice. Maybe just to start about a very short note about myself, like Jose Rinpoche started to explain about himself and his connection with Marpa and Hevajra. I myself started to study Marpa's life, Marpa's biographies in the year 2000 and 2001. And I read all the biographies, like more than 30 of the biographies of Marpa, and did my MA on that subject. And yeah, for 20 years, I've been very inspired by Marpa and his lineage, and the Ngok lineage and the Hevajra practice. I don't know why. I guess the link is there. I may have made wish in my past lives that is awakened in this life, but I wish that in this life and all the future ones, this continues, as I feel this is a very important lineage and practice. And I'm very happy for this commemoration today to happen so that we can talk about the Mar Ngok lineage together. So I will share with you a PowerPoint I made for today. So today is the third day of the 7th Tibetan month. And do you see the PowerPoint? Does it move? Yes, but it shouldn't be here. So first, maybe a short note on what do we mean by the Mar Ngok Kagyu lineage. So this, of course, Mar means for Marpa Lotsawa Choki Dorje. Its dates have been given different ways. Usually the date of the blue annals are recognized, like 1012 to 1197. But like His Holiness recognized, and also as my research has shown, I think the dates of Marpa should be rather the beginning of the millennium, from 1000 to 1085. And so the Mar Ngok, the word Ngok stands for the Ngok family, and more particularly the beginning of the family, well, in terms of religious lineage, with Ngoktön Choku Dorje. And so we talked a lot already about Marpa and Ngok today. So maybe a little word about Kagyu. In general, the word Kagyu means for ka and transmission for Gyu. So actually, a Kagyu can be any oral transmission, and actually there are many Kagyu lineage in the Tibetan history was been called Kagyu. They don't all come from Marpa. For instance, the Shangpa Kagyu doesn't come from Marpa, and sometimes we talk about the Ganden Kagyu for the Gelugpa or others. So it can mean in general oral transmission, but in particular, the word stands for Kabab Shik Gyupa. So the Ka is for Kabab, the currents, and the Shi means four, and Gyupa, so it's the lineage of the four currents. That refers to the various transmission that Naropa received from Tilopa. And this term, so Kagyu in this term for Kabab Shik Gyupa means more particularly the lineages that come from Marpa, and then that went to various disciples that we talk a little bit about in the earlier teachings, and that I will present a little bit more in my talk. So this refers to the lineage transmitting Marpa's teaching, coming from Tilopa and Naropa, as they were mediated by the Ngok family lineage. So this is the meaning of the Mar Ngok Kagyu lineage. So why commemorating the Mar Ngok lineage today on the 11th of August, one might wonder why this date has been chosen. And actually, this was more than 1 year ago or something like that, that Carl came up with this idea of commemorating the Mar Ngok lineage and asked me if I thought about a date. And so we started thinking together of finding a date that will be good. And then in the Ngok family lineage history, there is this explanation about the death or the Parinirvana of Ngoktön Choku Dorje. It reads, when Ngoktön reached his 13th year, and his father was in his 68th year, just after sunrise, on the 3rd day of the 7th month, that's today, of a horse year, that's 1090, that's 931 years ago, while wearing a thin cotton fabric over his body and carrying a small skull hand drum, Ngoktön Choku Dorje said, I'm going to Kechara. Is there someone going with me? He did 3 circumambulation around the retreat place, and as no one else came, he stepped on a boulder over which a stupa has been built, left a dazzling footprint, and ascended in the mists towards Kechara in the sound of the hand drum. So this is the description of the event of how Choku Dorje left our world. And like Chödze Rinpoche said earlier, this means he reached the rainbow body of going to Kechara, so ascending from the retreat place. And here, the picture you can see, this is actually in the Shung Valley that His Holiness talked about today, which was the seat of the Ngok for the past millennium. And here, actually, these are some ruins of the stupas that were there, commemorating actually the ascending place of Ngok towards Kechara. And this is the same place, but taken from the other side, from the retreat place, looking here at this red building, which is a reconstruction of the Treushing temple that was the seat of the Ngok for the past 1,000 years or so. So this is this Shung Valley in central Tibet, where the Ngok family flourished for all these years. So maybe just a short note on Marpa Lotsawa, as Chödze Rinpoche talked about him already quite a lot. So he was one of the master who was part of the second spread of the teaching in Tibet, the Tenpa Chidar. And actually, he was a very important translator, but he was one among many other translators who went to India. For example, one of his own master, Drogmi Lotsawa, was the beginning in Tibet of the Sakya lineage. Well, before it was Sakya, and who's the one who imported Hevajra into Tibet for the Sakya lineage. Was also a translator who went a lot to India and studied there with many masters. Another of these important translators was Lotsawa Kukpaletse, who also spent many years and translated many texts that are in the Kangyo and the Tengyo. And one of the friends of Marpa was Nyo Lotsawa, with whom he went to India for the first time, the first of his several travels to Nepal and India. There was also Ngoktön Lotsawa, who was a Tibetan who went to India and then came back to Tibet together with the Master Atisha, the Indian Master Atisha. A bit later, Ra Lotsawa, a bit before Lochen Rinchen Zanpo. So it was a period of intense travel and intense translation by many Tibetan masters who went to India at a period, like Chödze Rinpoche said, of change, where there was Brahmanical movements getting stronger in India, and as well outer influences that were starting to menace the practice of Buddhism on the subcontinent. So it was an intense moment of change in India, and of course, an intense moment of renaissance, of rebirth of Buddhism in Tibet after several decades or centuries of the teaching not being practiced so openly and so widespread in Tibet. So Marpa Lotsawa came at this time, and although he was from a somewhat rich family, he did not travel in very rich way. Actually, he did find some family assets that he offered to Drogmi, and then he changed all he had in gold, and then he went to India. But then he needed the help of Nyo Lotsawa, for instance, to get to India. And later on, he went to Tibet again several times to collect more gold, to go again to India. So he did not go to the big monasteries of India, but he went a little bit off the beaten track into the jungles. And it's actually not in the big monastery that met Naropa and Mitripa, who were also Panditas. He met them as siddhas, as accomplished masters in the jungles off the beaten track. So Marpa was kind of not unique in that way. Probably there were other Tibetans who met yogis in the jungles of India, but it's one of the specificities that he actually did not translate so many texts. We don't have nowadays. We don't have so many translations coming from Marpa. There are a few, of course, and there are many instructions, key instructions, but there are not, for instance, so many translations in the Tengyo or in the Kangyo. There is one commentary on Kriya Samaja in the Kangyo, and a few translation of Naropa's instruction in the Tengyo, but it's not that many. For instance, there are less translation by Marpa in the Kangyo and Tengyo done by Drogmilo Tsawa or Gyöpo Palatse, for instance. However, what Marpa was very known for was for his key instruction. That is to say, the practice instruction that he received from his masters, mostly Naropa and Mitripa, and that he gave on. And his lineage became very famous for its capacity to induce realization in the disciples. And so many of the early Kagyu masters, with the instructions of Marpa and of his disciples, were famous for reaching very easily the accomplishment of their practice through the potency of Marpa Lotsawa's key instruction that he got from his Indian masters. So maybe just a short note, because we're talking about the lineage today, the Mar Ngok lineage. And the Mar Ngok lineage, of course, is coming from Indian masters. So now this is a quote from the Lorong Chojung, which is a Dharma history that was written in the 15th century. It says there, in general, Marpa had in India 108 gurus, first among them Singalingpa. There were 50 exegetical tradition holders, and 13 were definite changes of appearance. In particular, there were 4 noble gurus, Naro, Maitri, Shantibhadra, and Jnanagarbha. Among them all, 2 were unrivaled, Naro and Maitri. So this is a short encapsulating description of Marpa's master. So it says 108 gurus. That means very many, that he met many sadhus, practitioners, gurus in the jungles, in the different practices. He traveled a lot in India, and he met all these yogis in the practice places of India, from whom he received many key instructions. And 50 exegetical tradition orders, this means 50 masters, that means a lot as well. The number 50 is a generality, who were actually giving explanation on the texts. And 13 changes of appearance, that means 13 masters who are actually rich CDs, that is to say, who were able to change the appearance of the world. So they had the capacity to change the manifestation of reality. And among these all, the 4 more important ones were Naropa, of course, the Mahasiddha and Mahapandita, and Mitripa. From them, from Mitripa, from Naropa in particular, he received I'm going to say a little bit later which transmissions he received, but mostly Hevajra and the Avatantras as well. And from Mitripa, he received also Evajra and the Namasamgiti, and as well the explanation of the Doha, of Mahamudra, etc. From Shantibhadra, he received Mahamaya, and from Jnanagarbha, he received the Tantra of Kriya Samaja. And this also he received from Naropa. So I talked earlier about the Kabapshi, or the 4 currents of instruction, or the 4 currents. The 4 currents. So this is the meaning of the term Kagyu. And this comes actually from Tilopa. So Tilopa, if you read his biography, we find two apparently paradoxical declarations. In one side, he says, I have human masters. They are Nagarjuna, Charyapa, Lawapa, and Kalpabadri. And then later he says, I do not have any human masters. My guru is omniscience. So this refers actually to two kinds of lineage. The first, the human masters, these four, they are the kababshi, the four currents of instruction. And this in the text is called the lineage of transmission and experience. This is also called, in the Kagyu, we make the difference between the long lineage and the short lineage. So this kababshi is the long lineage. So these four are the masters of the four currents, who gave teachings on the various completion stage practice, the Dzogchen practice, to Tilopa. For example, they taught Merit, Tumo, luminosity, cell, etc. So all the various tantras and various Kerim and Dzogchen practices, Tilopa received from human masters. Then he realized, he accomplished in himself the meaning of these practices. And he met with Vajradhara, with Dorje Chang. And then, so this realization means being inseparable from Dorje Chang, meeting with Dorje Chang. And then Dorje Chang is omniscience, Vajradhara is omniscience, it's enlightenment itself, which is why he says, I do not have any human master. My guru is omniscience. So his guru is Vajradhara, is Buddhahood itself. So this refers to the lineage of realization and blessing. So this close lineage that goes straight from Vajradhara to Tilopa. So there is these two aspects in the Kagyu lineage. The long lineage from the Kababshi, which gives the name to the Kagyu lineage, and the close lineage, which is the lineage from Vajradhara to Tilopa, that is to say the lineage of realization, that he actualized Buddha, the enlightened state, he met with Vajradhara, and so realized it directly, received directly from Buddhahood itself, this various instruction. So Marpa's main teaching in the 11th century in Tibet or in India, what was the most important teachings in India in the 11th century were the highest yoga tantra or the Niruttara tantra. And so Marpa, like many of the translators of the 11th century, when they went to India, what they mostly received at this period was the highest yoga tantra. And so what Marpa brought back to Tibet, it's teachings associated with these highest yoga tantras, and more particularly practice cycles associated with these tantras. The tantra of Hevajra, the tantra of Guhya Samaja, the tantra of Chakrasamvara, the tantra of Mahamaya, and the tantra of Chatushpita. And it is those tantric teachings, together with key instructions, that he brought back to Tibet and he gave to his teaching. And like I said before, Marpa's transmission is particularly well known in Tibet for the potency of his key instruction, the strength of his instruction, in particularly related to the perfection phase of this tantra, which in Tibet we called the Naro Chodruk, or the 6 doctrines of Naropa. So these 6 doctrines of Naropa, there are 6 or more, it depends on the numbers, but 6 practices associated with the perfection phases of these various tantras that Marpa brought from India, gave to his disciple, and then that led them to realization. Chögyam Rinpoche and His Holiness Chesang Rinpoche earlier today talk about Marpa's 4 disciples, and this is a very well-known metaphor, which is the 4 pillars. This image of the 4 pillars, it's actually an image that appears in the biography of Milarepa. In one of the early biography of Milarepa, which is called the 12 Great Disciples, Milarepa has a dream about these 4 pillars, and he goes to Marpa, telling him his dreams, he says that he sees, for instance, a great pillar one great pillar in the east on which there is a Garuda, and then he sees one in the west on which there is a snow lion. He sees one in the south on which there is a tigress, and he sees one in the north on which there is a vulture. And then Marpa then interprets this dream as referring to his four main disciples. The northern one, the vulture, refers to Milarepa, coming from Ngoktön in the south of Tibet, and then the other three, the Garuda refers to Metsembo, who comes from Tsangrong. The snow lions refers to Ngoktön Choku from Dol, and the tigress refers to Ngoktön Choku Dorje from Shun. These presentations of the four pillars come from the tradition of Milarepa's biography. In the biography of Marpa, this is not presented in this way. It's presented in the way like they are the four heart disciples. It's the four same ones, and there are other categories with other disciples, with Marpa Koyak and others. But if we keep with this simple and practical presentation of the four main disciples, so there is Milarepa, then Mitten, Turten, and Ngoktön. And in general, in the later way to explain the Kagyu lineage, it's been explained that Milarepa is the one who received what we call the practice lineage, that is the group Q, and the other three were those who received the explanation lineage, the Shegyu. It doesn't mean that Milarepa was the only one who practiced and the other one were only studying, of course not. What it means is that Milarepa mostly received the key instruction related to practice, and more particularly the practice of Chakra Samvara, and the other three received as well all the tantric commentaries on the various tantra that Marpa had received from India. For instance, as an example, His Holiness talked about earlier today about all the various commentaries on Hevajra that were written in India. So Marpa had studied and brought back these commentaries to Tibet, and he gave this to his disciple, and this became what is called the explanation lineage, or the Shegyu. So one of the disciple, so the northern disciple, the vulture, is Milarepa, is known as the practice lineage. If we talk about him in terms of style, we could say it's a yogic style. That is to say that what he practiced was mostly the 6 dharmas of Naropa, or the 6 yogas of Naropa, the Naro Chudruk, and among them, more particularly, Tummo, the inner heat. And his practice was mostly associated with the Tantra of Chakra Samvara. And this is a lineage that later on came to be known as well as Nyingyu. There is no substantial textual addition in the lineage by Milarepa, except for his song, but there is a personal style, the hermit living in the mountains, that shaped very much the way that Kagyu practitioners perceived himself in the long history of the Kagyu lineage in Tibet. Milarepa had several disciples, but among them, there were 2 main disciples who are sometimes likened to the sun, Gampopa, and the moon, Rechungpa. Actually, the one who spent the most of time with him was Rechungpa. And Rechungpa was, in terms of style of lineage, the one also who was the closest to Milarepa, and he gave rise to the Rechung Nyingyu. And he also made some tantric practices related to Chakra Samvara. So this is what the Nyingyu is. And then his other disciple was Gampopa. And then Gampopa was, his main seat was in Dakpo, in the region of Dakpo, and which is why he gave rise to what later became known as the Dakpo Kagyu. And his style was more monastic. He was a monk, and it's sometimes called the union of Kadam and Mahamudra, Kachak, Sungdrel. Why am I talking about this? This is to explain a little bit more the Kagyu lineage. So Gampopa as well had many disciples. And this is how we know, this is how the various Dakpo Kagyu lineages appeared. Actually, we talk about the Chehi Chungye, or the 4 primary and 8 secondary Kagyu lineages. So the 4 primary, it's the 4 lineage, the 4 disciples of Gampopa who gave rise to their own lineage. So this is the Karma Kagyu from Karmapa to Sumkyampa, the first Karmapa. The Pagdru Kagyu from Pamodrupa to Dorje Gyalpo, the Tsalpa Kagyu from Lamashon, and the Barom Kagyu from Barompa Dharma Wangchuk. So this is what we call the 4 primary Kagyu lineage. And then the second one, Pamodrupa Dorje Gyalpo, he himself had innumerable disciples. And among them, 8 gave rise to further lineages, which we call the 8 secondary Kagyu lineages. And among them, some of them are still alive today, which are, of course, the Drukung lineage that we know very well, the Drukpa, Taglung, Yapsang, Chopo, Shuksep, Gyalpa, and Martsang. So earlier today, Chozo Rinpoche was saying that Marpa's teaching has been somewhat eclipsed or forgotten. It's been a little bit seen as a little bit forgotten because it was then followed by Milarepa and Gampopa and all these 8 primary and 4 primary and 8 secondary lineages. There was an efflorescence of Kagyu lineages, in particular coming from Gampopa, who followed this monastic style of Gampopa. But so now, coming back to Marpa disciple, and you remember I talked about the explanation lineage, the Shegu. So first I'll talk shortly about Meitön and Surten, and then we'll talk more in detail about Ngok. So there was one of the 4 disciples who was Meitsempo from Songrong, so he's the western pillar, likened to Garuda. And to him, Marpa gave several teachings, but mostly he gave him teachings on Hevajra and on luminosity, on Ösel. And there are actually several commentaries by disciples of Meitön that are on Hevajra that are still available today. So Meitön also received the explanation lineage from Marpa and continued him, but his lineage was not very successful, and so it did not continue very long. His disciples, the lineage did not continue. Then there was Choten Wangye from Dol, the eastern pillar, compared to Snow Lion. And he was mostly known for his transmission of Guya Samaja. Guya Samaja is sometimes called the Father Tantra or Mahayoga Tantra. It was a very important Tantra in India that was central for the way that Tantras, the highest Yoga Tantra, was shaped. And in the 11th century, as we can read in Marpa's biography, it was a very important Tantra. And many of the Tibetans who went to India, they got Guya Samaja, and it was a very important transmission back in Tibet. And so one of the important transmission of Guya Samaja in Tibet was the one that Marpa brought back from India, that he received from Shnanagarba and Naropa. And his main recipient for this Guya Samaja tradition was Surten. And Surten himself had important disciples, and his lineage actually of Guya Samaja continued over the centuries, and it was one of the lineage that came to Bhutan and that later on came to the Geluk the tradition, to the Geluk lineage and to Tsongkhapa. And so the Guya Samaja lineage that is in the Gelugpa lineage today, that comes from Tsongkhapa, is actually in large part as well the transmission coming from Marpa and Surten. And this is linked with several commentaries, and there are commentaries on the Guya Samaja by Surten disciples that are still available today and that can be studied. And so now to the main topic of today, and the main orders of the explanation lineage, that is to say the Ngok family. So the Ngok family, the first religious master in the Ngok family was Ngoktön Choku Dorje, who lived from 1023 and died in 1090. Ngoktön Choku Dorje was coming from a noble family whose ancestry could trace back to the Tibetan Empire of the 7th, 8th, and 9th century. And like Chödze Rinpoche said, and His Holiness said today, he received at length Marpa's tantric explanation and transmission. So he studied with him the tantras, he received this transmission, he practiced them, and he reached realization on this basis. And in particular, he practiced cycles associated with the Hevajra Tantra. And like His Holiness mentioned, Ngoktön Choku Dorje, Yidam, was Nairatmya. And actually, when he received the transmission of Nairatmya from Marpa, he had a vision of Nairatmya. And several times in the biography, it is described that he has direct vision of Nairatmya. So he was very strongly associated with this practice. And to talk again in terms of style, the style of Marpa was a tantric practitioner from a lay tantric practitioner, mostly associated with the practice of Hevajra and tantric instruction and key instruction. And Ngoktön Choku Dorje followed the style of Marpa. So if we talk about in terms of style, we could say that there are the three founding fathers of the Kagyu lineage. It's Marpa, Milarepa, and Gampopa. So Marpa, it's kind of the lay tantric practitioner. Milarepa is the hermit living in the mountains, and Gampopa is the monk founding in a monastery. So it's three styles, if one wants. And in terms of style, Ngoktön Choku Dorje is the one who followed most closely the style of his master Marpa, with Hevajra Tantra as the center of his practice, and a practice marked by a knowledge of tantric commentaries and a profound realization of the key instruction coming from Tilopa, Naropa, Mitripa, etc. And one of the main, often when I did my research on the Ngok, I was saying I'm studying the Ngok, and the people were looking at me like, the who? The Ngok. And then, so that they knew what I was talking about. You know, in Milarepa's biography, at one point, Milarepa goes away from Marpa, and he goes to Ngoktön Choku Dorje, and he studies for 1 year with Ngok, Hevajra. He practices with him for 1 year, but it doesn't work. Then they go back to Marpa. And then the people say, oh, yeah, that one. Yes, that one. So Ngok is generally known because he taught Milarepa when Marpa did not give him teaching. But of course, in the biographies of Marpa and in the biography of the Ngok, this is not mentioned, but in the biography of Milarepa, this is what is generally remembered. So this is in general how we know Ngoktön Choku Dorje. So Ngoktön Choku Dorje was a lay practitioner. That is to say that he had a family. And so I find this quote from the family lineage history quite interesting, representative of what his life may have been. So the text says, when Dode reached his 4th or 5th year, for the middling grade donation, father, son, and everyone, with Milarepa as a servant, went into Master Marpa's presence in Lodrak. They received from him the 2 empowerments of Hevajra 9 deities and Nairatmya 15 deities. One day, at the Dharma place where they were receiving the tantras, the boy will sometimes climb on his father's shoulder and pull his hair and beard, and sometimes will pull the master's Marpa hair and beard. His father, Ngoktön Choku Dorje, said, "This is not comfortable. Tomorrow I shall not bring him along." But the venerable Marpa said, "Do not leave the kid behind. Bring him along. He is called Ngok Shumpa Dode and will become a meritorious one. it is because he will say, I have met with the Venerable Marpa, that my lineage will come to have a following. So this is quite interesting because it shows a quite human anecdote of Ngoktön Choku and Ngoktön Dorje and Marpa's life as family. And we know that sometimes when we're teaching with our family, with our kids, it can be a little bit tough. But in this case, so Ngoktön Choku went with his kids, Ngoktön Dorje, to the teaching of Marpa, and it was a bit tough, and the kid was jumping on him. But Marpa said, it's important as he's here. It's because he meets me today that his lineage will continue and that my lineage will continue. This is reported in the history of the Ngok. So Ngoktön Dorje lived from 78 to 1154, and he was a lay practitioner, and he was a very prolific and learned writer. He actually studied with his father, with Ngoktön Choku, and as well with many of the disciples of his father, because his father, like we saw before, he died when he was 13. So he studied as well a lot with his father's disciple. He studied with Marpa, he studied with other masters as well. And there are a lot of writings in the Ngok family that come back to Dorje, and he really shaped the style of the Ngok lineage. And there are actually writings on all mandalas that became characteristic of the Ngok lineage by Ngoktön Dorje. And he is the one that a few decades after Marpa's death gathered his relics. Actually, the relics of Marpa had been kept in his seat, the seat of Marpa in Lodrak, but they were not well kept by his children, by Marpa's children. And so Ngoktön Dorje got back the relics from Marpa's children, and he brought them to Shung, to his seat in the Shung Valley. And in this way, the Shung Valley and the Ngok seat somehow became the seat representing Marpa's teaching in Tibet. And in the 12th century, one could say that Ngoktön Dorje and Gampopa and Rechungpa, as the heir of Milarepa, they were all living at the same period. They were the three representatives of Marpa's teaching that was the most famous in Tibet. So Ngoktön Dorje at this time was as important for the Kagyu than Gampopa and Rechungpa, with these different styles that I talked about before. And Ngoktön Dorje was the greatest proponent of Marpa's tantric legacy in the 12th century. And actually, if we read the biographies of contemporaries of Dorje, the 12th century biography, they talk a lot about the Ngok, about Shung, about this transmission from Marpa that is in Shung. Ngoktön Dorje was a lay practitioner. He had actually 6 children, but unluckily, all these children died quite young. However, because Ngoktön Dorje had a very long life, he could add many disciples, and thanks to this, Marpa's transmission continued. And it was actually his grandson who founded the main seat of the Ngok in the 12th century, but this we will see in the next slide. So this is a tree showing the Ngok family. So from Ngoktön Choku, then his son Ngoktön Dorje. Ngoktön Dorje had one main wife was Jokyap, from whom he had 5 children, and another one, Tulki, from whom he had 1 child. And these two, Jotsul and Jotok, or Togmedrak, were actually the two, the other one that they died quite early. This one was 10, this one also, and so they died actually, all died, Dorje died in 54, and all the children, if you look at the date, they died before him. So they could not really continue his transmission. However, so the two main sons were Jotsul and Jotok. And Jotsul, the one with the wife Tulki, had 2 children, one girl and 1 boy. And the main one was this one, Kunga Dorje. And this Kunga Dorje is the one who actually gave rise to what we call the Tsangsa branch of the Ngok family, and is the one who founded the seat in the late 12th century. And then the second son Jotok, he had children, and he gave rise to the other branch of the Ngok family, which is the Gyaltsa branch. So the Ngok actually have these two main branches, and they both lived in the Shonu Valley. And the first branch, the seat of the first branch of the Gyaltsa was Riwokyungdin, was actually a monastery that was existing since the time of Ngoktön Choku Dorje and Ngoktön. So they kept the family seat. And Kyunga Dorje, he founded in the late 12th century another seat, which was called Treushing. And Chögyam Rinpoche said today that in the Ngok family, there are what we call the 7 jewels. So the 7, they are a bit difficult to count, but like you see here on this map, the ones in yellow are the most important ones. So there are more than 7. But the 7 are defined in this way. So the first is Ngoktön, who lived in the 12th century. We talked about him. The second is Ngoktön Dorje, who was the founder of the seat of Treushing, where Mahapa's relics were kept, and which became the seat of the lineage. And actually was a very important master. He studied a lot with Dorje's disciple. So he received his transmission from Ngoktön himself and from his uncle, Jotok, and from many disciples of Ngoktön. And he traveled a lot as well to come to Eastern Tibet. And he's the one who actually started to make the Ngok family increase. And he's the one who founded the seat of Treushing. And the second, or the third jewel, or the third important monk master, was Siji Dragpa. And he actually was the first monk in the lineage. He became a monk in the Zulpu tradition. And so at this stage, we can see a change a little bit in the lineage from lay family, from the lay lineage, a family lineage, they remain a family lineage, but they become a monastic lineage. So often it goes from uncle to nephew. Then the fourth jewel is Rinchen Zanko, who was also a monk, who was ordained in Zulpu, which is a monastery nearby Shun. And he enlarged Treushing, and he commissioned a copy of the Kangyur, of the canon and the Tengyur for the monastery. The fifth one was Chökyi Gyaltsen, a very important master, also a monk, also ordained in Zulpu. And we can find in the monastery, in the history, that he had a very important link with Drikung monastery. And for example, once he was giving an empowerment in Drikung, and he made miracles during this empowerment. So the Ngok teachings already entered the Drikung lineage from that period, and probably as well before with Kyunga Dorje, but here with Chökyi Gyaltsen, it's really written in the text. Then the sixth was Donjupal, also a monk, but later on he had a son, and his son was Jangchokpal, who was the seventh jewel, and a very important master of the first half of the 15th century. And Jangchokpal had actually many disciples, Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelugpa lineage, as well as the Chenkwang Lotsawa and Ge Lotsawa, who were very important pandits and masters of the 15th century, the second Gyalwang Drukchen, etc. So Jangchokpal is, after Dorje, the one who was the most well-known and who had the largest activity for the Ngok lineage in Tibet. So now just a little bit of geography about the Ngok. So this is now, you see a map of central Tibet. And you see here, there is Lhasa, and Shun, the valley of the Ngok, is located here, nearby Lhasa. And actually, just here, like you will see, if you go to Tibet today, most likely you will go by air, and you will land here. This is the Lhasa airport in Gongkar, actually, the Gongkar airport. It's like an hour and a half or an hour from Lhasa by car. And here, so this is a picture I took when I landed at the airport in 2014. And this valley here is the Shung Valley. And this sub-valley is where the seat of the Ngok is located. So this is just south of the Lhasa airport. So it's quite easy to go there, even though there isn't much left today, except the monastery that has been rebuilt and the stupa. But at least you can go to this place where Marpa came and all the Ngok family were born and taught. So this is the Ngok seat. Like I said before, there were several seats of the Ngok in Shung, Riwokungding and Cherushing. And so the height, the highest period for the Ngok transmission for us in Shung was from the 12th to the mid 15th century, from Ngoktön Choku Dorje to Ngoktön Choku Dorje. So now this is here, this is a river. When I went there, it was in June. There is almost no water in the river, but sometimes, like you can see the height of this wall, sometimes there seems to be a lot of water. I don't know how this happened. There can be so much water in such a short time, but at least one can see it's like this with the size. So after the 15th century, Ngoktön Choku Dorje gave his teaching. The transmission was kept within the Ngok lineage, but the next Ngok holders were not so strong masters, and so he gave his teaching outside of the family. And actually, the most important holder of the lineage were outside of the family. And so in the next 2 centuries, somehow after 2 centuries, we lose complete trace of the Ngok family in Shung. And so in the 17th century, the Cherushing monastery of the Ngok was given to the neighboring monastery of Ngoktön Choku Dorje at the time of the 5th Dalai Lama. So by this time, there doesn't seem to be any activity by the Ngok family in Shung anymore. So it continued until somewhat the 16th century. There is some trace until the 16th century, but then after it gets lost, and then it is given to Ngoktön Choku Dorje in the 17th century. Then there was some Mongol Dzungar invasions in the 18th century, which destroyed the seat. So not much was left. And of course, there was the Cultural Revolution in the 20th century, which destroyed as well the place. So there was nothing left. So the monastery that you can see here on the picture, it was rebuilt in 2012. And before that, there had been another monastery that was rebuilt in the 1980s. So this is Shung as it is today. In terms of content of teaching, His Holiness and His Holiness talked about the various mandalas that Marpa brought from India. And so among them, there are 6 that he gave, that Marpa gave to Ngok, and that became the main teachings of the Ngok. And there is a 7th one, Namasamgiti, that does not come from Marpa, that he received from someone else. And so these 7 mandalas are the 7 main teachings of the Ngok family. And their main protector is the protector du Solma. And the way they call the Naro Chodok, the 6 yogas of Naropa in the Ngok family, is Sepo, or the teaching of mixing and transference. So maybe just short pictures. Like His Holiness today explained the signification of the 16 hands of Hevajra. So you can see here on the right, it's the animals that pacify the diseases, and on the left, the deities that symbolize the masteries, and his 4 feet. So this tanka is a tanka of Hevajra of the Ngok tradition. So you can see here Vajradhara in the middle, Tilopa, Naropa, and then this is Marpa, and this is Ngoktön Choku Dorje, and this is Ngoktön Choku Dorje, and Ngoktön Dorseng. And then it goes out of the family until the 4th Shamarpa that we see here. And this is actually a Karma Kagyu lineage here, but it starts with the Ngok family. And the other transmission of the Ngok that was very important was that of Naratmya with 15 deity mandala. And another mandala, which is also associated with the cycle of Vajra, is a 49 deity mandala of Vajra Panjara. So you see there are five mandalas of Vajra in the 5 direction. So this is, and then 4 protectors. So that's 49 deities. There is another mandala, which is important, of the practice of Mahamaya with 5 deity, 1 central one and 4 in the directions. 2 mandalas that are associated with Chatushpita. There is the mandala of the female form of Chatushpita with 13 deity. This is probably a Mar Ngok lineage as well, with Marpa here and Ngoktön here. And this is the male form of Chatushpita with 97 deity. And this is as well a tanka from the Ngok tradition. This is in the process of being identified. We don't know exactly who they are, but we are working on this. This is a tanka that was sent to me a few days ago by someone working in Switzerland for the Alain-Bordier Museum. And so this is a tanka in their possession and they're studying at the moment. And the protector of the Mar Ngok lineage, du Solma. This is also a representation coming from the Mar Ngok. So you can see here, this is Marpa, and this is Ngok Dode, and this is du Solma, of course, and that's it. And just to finish, after we saw that the most important and 7th master was Ngoktön Choku Dorje, and he had many disciples, but among his disciples, 2 were very important. That's Gyurlo Tsawa and Lochen or Lotsawa Sonam Gyamtso. These 2 masters, they received all transmission from Jangchuk Pa, and they had a very important disciple who was the 4th Shamar Rinpoche, Chodra Gyeshe. And it was disciple of the 4th Shamar who were Drikung masters, the 16th Drikung throne holder, Gyalwang Kunga Rinche, in the late 15th century and early 16th, and his successor, Gyalwang Rinchen Punsok, in the 16th century. They received the transmission of the Ngok mandalas from the 4th Shamar. And then in the lineage we read at the beginning of the event today, we see there the names of many Drikung masters. And so this transmission of the Ngok tradition then continued within the Drikung lineage, for it was practiced and was continued to be handed over in the Drikung lineage, and then in the Kagyu lineage, Karma Kagyu, and then it was revitalized in the 19th century by Jangön Kongtrul Lodetaye in the Kagyu Mante. And then His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche then received this transmission, and then this is a topic of another talk, I suppose, because it's a lot of details. And this is how the lineage that His Holiness is holding today. And this is a representation that was made by Karl of the whole lineage. So of the Ngok, and then Jangchuk Pa, then going to the 4th Shamar and the Drikung lineage, to Ngok, to Jangön Kongtrul Lodetaye, and then the Drikung lineage, and up today to Chetsang Rinpoche. So maybe I will stop with this and with this prayer to that may the activity of the Mar Ngok lineage unfold more and more, and that it may be practiced. And so I make the wish that through the activity of His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche and Chöze Rinpoche and all those who practice the Mar Ngok tradition, this may continue and spread far and wide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you very much indeed. Before we come to the final thanks, Chöze Rinpoche will, together with us, pray with us the long life prayer to His Holiness.
Oi Tishijan Kolo and Dewa and Chimbu and Gar and Chidu and Domze and Jabda Chande and Bawo Onjo and Lazo and Je Choto and Mondo Malu Jardu Kunjo Sumdu Shaja Zenge Temba and Zinjan Pelwe and Danyi Kazan Japan, Dojan, Telen, Joy, Lendo, and Jitzer, Lama, Ishades, Juma, and Tobe, Yejer of Joshan, Ded, Mutsujan, Samdai, Gumba, Yamdo, and Tobe, Bayon, Yonzo, and Bechin, Joy, and Dende, Gumbo, Jardins. Donga yende ne gonjo gezo henze to be to show ele chon zombe dogen dolbe semje zambo yende sende ngebe sheso ijode cheben jobe gongba eroze jen zobe den la lome yembe Zombe and Dogen, Shidre, Lazing, Be, Yingbo, and Dunge, Denze, in Jobdensh. Tobden, Shetan, Gombo, and Dragon, Be, Mame, Londo, Tembe, Yingbo. Teje and Hadre, Jegun, Sumendo, Pelvie, Wongshu, Chodo, Jobdensh. Doa emalu Türkiye züncele brande namjon nimburu yongui duje ngoja jembo indejendo gajre jabde jembo elondo Mela ma yeda injelanda yere zonjo shelo yedembe dorje roje meze anaboinje trinlen zamoye mende yondo joy Joy, joy, Moyanje Yambona Moyanje Joy Yambo Yambo Oyame Yambo Goine Goyando Oyambe Shijai Gunze Gunjen Jujin Dendre Nela Wanto Yunjigumba Rinjen Baje Demba Yanzeda Jendu Yandezo Yangombe Enzinju Inji
Thank you. Thank you, dear Your Holiness. Thank you, Your Eminence Chitsekuchen Rinpoche. And thank you, Dr. Duché. As one of the coordinators of the Mar Ngok group, I would like to thank Carl Jung for proposing the foundation of the Mar Ngok group in 2016 as a long life offering to His Holiness. This Mar Ngok group really grew when the Milarepa Retreat Centrum became the official Mar Ngok seat of Drikung Europe, according to His Holiness's wishes. With that, we would also like to thank the Gartschen Stiftung and its board for its great support of the project. Also, thank to you very much, Carolina von Grafenreuth, Angelika Binschik, and Heidrun Töderschmidt for the organization. I'm happy to report the group is growing into an international, worldwide Mar Ngok family. And it's my wish that people get inspired by all these efforts by countless individuals around the world, who I sadly don't have time to mention. Their efforts have not gone unnoticed. May the teachings flourish, and may the Mar Ngok family grow with every one of you. Thank you. And now I pass the microphone back to Carolina.
Thank you, Daniela. On behalf of the Center and of the international Sanghas from around the world, I would deeply want to thank His Holiness the Drikong Kyabgon, as well as His Eminence Chökyi Rinpoche and Dr. Cécile Duché for having celebrated the first Mahaparinirvana commemoration of Ngoktön Choku Dorje together with us. Your Holiness, I think one can say that your vision to revive the splendid lineage of Lord Marpa has come true. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I would like to thank His Eminence Chökyi Rinpoche for having shared so many insights about your practice and also about the life of Marpa. We are very grateful to have heard everything what you have experienced. Thank you so very much. Cécile, thank you very much also for your absolutely vivid presentation. It was like being in this presentation, and I think all the audience was really very grateful, and it was wonderful to hear so much about the lineage and to really know why it's so important to celebrate this auspicious day. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much to all the Venerable Rinpoches, Khenpos, and the ordained for having participated in this wonderful event. To all the translators, I thank you very, very much. We all thank you very much. Without you, we couldn't understand anything. Thank you for all your very valuable work. My farewell goes to all the Sanghas and the participants around the world. It was wonderful to having celebrated this auspicious day with you. To all the organizers, and especially to you, Daniela, who has spent so much time, so many weeks preparing and working for this event. Thank you very much to you, Daniela. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Jetzt kannst du alle freischalten.
Ich weiß nicht, wie man sie schaltet. Ich muss eine schalten.
Bye, Holiness. Thank
Bye,
you.
Holiness. Bye, Holiness.
Bye.
Good night.
Ich bedanke mich. Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you, everyone.
Herzlichen Dank, Rinpoche La und
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, Carolina, Angelica. Thank
Bye for all of
you.
you.
Everybody,
Gracias, bendiciones.
Urima Rinpochela.
bye, Holiness.
长命百岁。Dankeschön, Daniela, Tony.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for hosting. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon.
Und danke, Christi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, Joseph. Guten Rinpoche.
Jetzt muss Daniela beenden, sonst fliegt sie raus.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
So I leave now. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye, Christine.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bis
much.
nächstes Mal.
Thank
Really
you.
Bye,
wonderful.
Benno.
Thank you very much.
Ano nang
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
再见的了。
Tashi-dele.
Tashi-delek.
Bye, Tischdele.
Sidele. Sidele.
Danke, Rinpoche.
Brilliant organization. Thank you.
Christy, we go to the Gongshik or not?
Is it now?
She already left. Bye, everyone. Ich leere den Raum, okay?
Ja.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Tschüss.
Tschüss. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You're very welcome.
Daniela, du beendest?
Ja, es ist schneller, wenn Sie es selber machen. Weil man muss
Ah, okay.
aufpassen, dass es keine.
Ah ja, okay.
Ich beende dann insgesamt,
Weil
ja.
wenn ich jetzt beende, fliegen alle raus, glaube ich. Auch du?
Ja, genau.
Mhm.
Ja. Ihr könntet uns nur in einen anderen Raum schicken, aber das ist okay.
Ja, das.
Ihr müsst mal mitgucken in die Teilnehmerliste. Ich kann gar nicht.
Sind noch 99.
Ja.
Ja. 97. Muss ich meine Brille wieder anziehen?
Könnte sonst nur einen Breakout-Room auch noch machen.
I let you drink tea. Thank you very much again. This was extraordinary. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for participating. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Und jetzt noch 87.
87.
Ist die.
Die ist schon raus.
Mhm.
Ich kann komischerweise plötzlich nicht mehr nur noch Stummschaltung machen oder nichts anderes mehr, obwohl ich noch Co-Host bin.
Komisch.
Du kannst mir, glaube ich, auch den Host selber übergeben.
Oh, ihr habt jetzt
Ja.
sowieso das Meeting, oder, Daniela?
Ja.
Ja.
Aber dann kann ich jetzt nicht aufnehmen, gell? Weil wenn ich jetzt dann nachher beende.
Oh, wir sind live auf YouTube übrigens noch.
Ja, ich weiß schon. Ich schalte das mal ab.